I don't know if this is being streamed or televised first. So those folks who may be out there online, this is a very free-flowing exercise with a number of very knowledgeable citizens who are willing to spend their time on a weekend to sit down and try to come up with some solutions for the state. And I would encourage everyone to, again, use this model and play with it. It's very illuminating, and I want to add myself to the category of concerned citizens. I am not an expert by any means in this, and the challenge for me is to so our group worked up right until 5 minutes to 11, so to synthesize everything that came out of there is really not possible, especially because the conversations were all over the board, but I have a series of comments that people made that I think are illuminating, and I also think that much of what you heard from the previous groups was echoed in ours. And we did take our vote, though, with the green dots, and that's where a lot of the focus of our discussion was. So the budget items, such as state lotteries, had a lot of red dots on it. We didn't go there. We spent times on other areas, and so I'm going to be patient. I'm going to run through some of what we discussed here. So one of the first comments that somebody made was we really should be looking, instead of the next 30 years, let's look at the next 5 to 10 years, because like any strategic plan, we're going to come back and revisit this. So try to fix what we can and our goals over shorten up the graphs. Our goals should be immediate goals that we're going to revisit. One of the interesting and very curious things to come out of the group interaction is that people are able to change their minds based on the information that they're getting. So we discussed the PFD and the different methodologies, and after folks looked at what was happening with the graphs and they listened to their fellow citizens, and I will say there's no partisanship in any of this. People were searching for answers. They were passionate about some things, but they were speaking with each other. So after reviewing, say for instance, the impact that the PFD cap would have on the various charts and the endowment fund, it was taken off the table. Whereas there were a number of people in favor of it in the beginning, that one was taken off the table because they were also weighing not just what would affect the state's budget, but the real impact or the difference it would have in people's lives. And I just was very encouraged by that, is that we're all able to, based on sufficient information, change our point of view. A lot of the categories seem to have a very incremental effect. So, and I know other groups have noted that, the mining tax and others, but nevertheless, we went through those because the idea was, as small and incremental as they are, when you're dealing with the budget, you've got to go through every item. There were cautions, be careful about the impact on business. We want business to be successful and we want to support industry's growth. Let's see. Another wonderful thing for me is buried throughout all of the comments, everybody in the group, it seems to me, there was a consensus that education needs a steady stream of income directed towards the schools. And how are we going to capture that from everybody who's up here working? There was support for Senator Bishop's SB 97 bill that is on the table. And again, if it's somewhat disjointed here, my notes are also, but there was a little bit of discussion surrounding that. Sales tax potential, and also some discussion is how do we capture income from out-of-state workers? How can we do that in a constitutional manner? So there's a commuter tax recommended. Let's consider or look into that. Sales tax, the cost of a tax, and there was, like a former group, is the cost, trying to weigh the cost of implementing some of these programs relative to what are we really going to get on that, and what is going to be the impact on the people of the state. 3, 4. So an interesting suggestion that, again, following on education, why not an educational endowment fund that take $5 million estate lands, put it into this endowment fund and have it managed similar to the mental health trust. Throughout the whole hour, lots of regrouping back to how do we search for a consistent stream of revenue for education. Another thing I thought was very encouraging is that it's not this group working on this problem. I think that people around the state are doing it. Diane Kaplan was in our group, and she says that the Rasmussen Foundation has convened a group, I think of them as a think tank, that are coming up with these kind of discussions also. And I hope that each one of you will find her later and get a fuller description of what it is they're doing. Part of this was to possibly split the PFD in half, with one half of it going towards education. Some of the discussions surrounded creative ways to use the savings we have, borrowing against the savings we have, caution against government playing with money. The PFD, it was noted, and this goes back to participants, having a position but then willing to change it, sometimes immediately or years later. The participant who was originally against the PFD, but realizing now that it provides a cash economy in rural areas, supporting subsistence, and that PFD fund also has a huge multiplier effect in the state's economy. That was countered in some part by another participant going, well, in my demographic, it fuels the meth industry. And these are actual things, we need to consider. So the further out from the hubs, the more important the PFD becomes. Caution to slow down development, long-term development. Let's think about possibly interstate community grouping, inter-community ties, and being more effective with the infrastructure that we're building. Lastly, like looking at different pots of money. There seems to be huge Alaska Housing Finance Corporation portfolio. Do we need as a state to be in the banking business? Look at other pots of money that the state has to see if these could be better utilized. This in no way captures the breadth or depth of all of the conversations that our group has, and my apologies to our group for that. There were a lot of experts in the room, and I wanted to thank our group, James Gilchrist and Will Bishop, Claire Ross. James was our scribe, and I'm hoping that the notes that he took can somehow be put on the line underneath some of these revenue categories. You'll get a little fuller picture of some of the comments that people made. But thank you for the opportunity to participate.